welcome to Wildlife with Pete. So this episode is going to be all about birds. And here in New Zealand, over 70% of the bird species are actually endemic, which means they're not naturally found anywhere else in the world. So what I'm going to do is visit a few habitats in my local area and see how many of those endemic species I can find. And the first area I've come to today is my local wetland area. And there doesn't seem to be anyone else around, which is pretty lucky because it means the birds hopefully haven't been disturbed. It's nice and peaceful. So I'm going to get set up and then I'll explain a little bit more about why so many of the species here in New Zealand are endemic. And yeah, hopefully we'll spot quite a few of them. So I think I found a pretty good spot. I've done a lap. I found a place in some tall grass right next to the water. The trees behind me, so I'm pretty well hidden. And there's already quite a few birds out there. So I'll put the big lens on now and we'll see if any of these species are endemic. An endemic species is one that is only found naturally in one part of the world. These species are usually found in isolated areas like islands. Many of New Zealand's plants and animal species are endemic, and this is due to it being isolated from any other landmass for over 80 million years. These species include all of New Zealand's amphibians and reptiles, over 90% of its insects, over 70% of its birds, and many of its plants and fungi are not found anywhere else in the world. This species of waterfowl with a white head and brown body is a female paradise shelduck, or putangitangi as they're known by the Maori people. This species is endemic to New Zealand and can be found throughout, inhabiting large urban parks, wetlands, open pastures and braided rivers in alpine valleys. Unusually for many bird species, the female is more conspicuous than the male, with a white head and brown chestnut body. The male's plumage is darker, with a grey body and a black head. These birds are usually found in breeding pairs, apart from during the molting period when they leave their territories and gather in large flocks, usually in lakeland areas. This female seemed to be looking around, so it's safe to assume there was probably a male somewhere close by. A little bit later on in the afternoon and the pair were reunited, and I couldn't help but think that the female might have just been having a bit of peace and quiet. These birds are very vocal, and it's very common to hear the zeeks and zonks of the paradise shelduck throughout their territories. It was nice to spot this lone sacred kingfisher, or kotare, perched high up in a tree. They are commonly seen hunting in these coastal wetland areas during winter, when insects become scarce inland and most birds migrate to the coast. As I was just about to leave the reserve, I spotted this endemic fantail, or piwaiwaka, sat uncommonly still on a branch. It was just drying itself off after getting wet in a small downpour of rain. These birds are rarely ever still for more than a few seconds as they flit from branch to branch, hawking insects out the air as they go. The fantail is known to be a very curious bird and will often be seen flying very close to people when they're out hiking as it tries to swoop and catch the bugs that they unknowingly disturb. These birds are spoken about a lot in Maori mythology and are said to be the messengers of death. Hiking in New Zealand, you usually find these boot washing stations at the entrance and exits to hikes, and they're there to stop the spread of certain diseases. This one is here specifically to try and stop the spread of kauri dieback, which is a disease that affects New Zealand's largest forest tree, the kauri tree. Hi everyone, so I've come to Waiafeta Forest Park today, which is part of a larger conservation park that stretches from basically the bottom of the Coromandel Peninsula down to Taronga, which I'm not sure what the distance is. I'll have a look, maybe I'll even put a little map on the screen for you. Yeah, but for anyone that knows this area, you'll know that it's a large conservation park, which is great. Yeah, and I'm carrying on. Sorry, I just walked into a spider's web. Carrying on the search for endemic birds today, plus any other wildlife I see, because this area, this forest park, is home to quite a lot of unique species. So you've got the usual bird species, but I mean, I would be very lucky if I saw some of these species, but it's home to the two species of bats that live here in New Zealand. So they're the only two mammal species in the whole country. That's the long-tailed and short-tailed bats. They're nocturnal, very hard animals to find, so might not see them today, but who knows? You never know with wildlife. And then, yeah, there's quite a few insects, beetles and stuff in this area that are, again, endemic and unique. So yeah, we'll see what we find, but definitely keeping our eyes open for endemic birds. The New Zealand pigeon, or kereroo, is New Zealand's only endemic species of pigeon. It's easily recognisable by its large size, pure white breast feathers, and those purple, grey and green head and wing feathers. Like many of New Zealand's endemic bird species, the kereroo is full of character, and these birds are fascinating to watch. The kereroo is strictly vegetarian, feeding on a diet of flowers and fruits from many trees. An interesting fact about the kereroo is that they store their food in a crop, and when they eat fruit, that fruit eventually ferments and it makes the pigeon drunk. In fact, these pigeons have been known to get so tipsy that they'll actually fall out of trees, and then they have to be put somewhere safe until they can sober up and fly off. Drunkenness aside though, kereroo are very important to their ecosystem, as they're one of the only birds that can swallow the large fruits of the forest. So they play a very important role in dispersing seeds from native trees such as the periri tree and the tower. New Zealand really is a land of fungi and insects. Lots of the mushrooms, lots of the fungi, like the one back there, are very brightly coloured. I don't know the name of that one, but I'll have a research and I'll put it down on the screen. But yeah, I always keep my eyes peeled. I love looking for mushrooms and fungi. And now is the time of year here in New Zealand when they're around. And yeah, they're amazing because there's so many different really vibrant colours. And some of them are also bioluminescent, so they glow in the dark as well, which is really cool. And places like this forest are perfect places to find them. Or the leaf litter. So I've just come up I've up the trail, and now I'm kind of above the tree canopy. I think the hut, which is at the end of this trail that I'm on, isn't far now from where we are. But yeah, it's nice to be above the trees and the sun's shining. And I think a lot of the times when you watch wildlife videos and stuff, it's all go go go. But obviously, when I'm hiking, and I'm sure most other people, it's nice to just have a minute. Everyone sits down and has a minute, especially when you can take in a view, which is what I always do. But obviously, not everyone puts it on camera. So I thought it might be nice just to have a minute of just sitting still, and I'll put you down, and you can enjoy the view without being talked to by me, and just have a moment of peace. This little female New Zealand tomtit, or Miro Miro, stopped just long enough on the trail for me to get a couple of seconds footage of her before she flew off into the trees. There are two subspecies of the New Zealand tomtit, which is endemic, one in the North Island and one in the South, and they both are known to inhabit exotic and native forests. Person to stay here. 1st to the 3rd of the 6th. God, oh no, just today. So for anyone that's not familiar with New Zealand hiking, around the country there's loads of these huts, all different shapes and sizes, and in different areas. Some of them are really like way out in the back country. Others, like this one, is only probably about an hour's walk from the car park. So yeah, they're dotted around. The way they work is you've got to book through the DOC, which is the Department of Conservation, which are the government body that looks after the parks and the huts as well. Although this one does say it's maintained by a tramping club, so a walking club. But yes, most of them I think are maintained by clubs like that or the DOC. and you pay your fees, and you get like a little pass, a hut pass, and you can come and stay at the hut for however many nights you've booked for. Some of them get really busy, obviously, at certain times, and the ones that are in like the areas where everyone wants to go. Always like this one. There's no one here at the minute at this one, but we looked in the book, and the last people to stay here literally left today. So, but yeah, they're pretty cool. It's a nice way to do it if you're hiking. You don't want to rush, and yeah, cool experience. This is Daly's clearing hut, and we're on Daly's clearing track. That's the one we just took to get up here. I'm not going to stay here, not tonight anyway. But yeah, I thought I'd give you a little bit more information about what, in case anyone was wondering what the strange shack was in the middle of my hike. So another day, another reserve. I'm at a place called Talperiro Reserve today, which is not actually far from Athenry Wildlife Reserve, where I was at a few days ago. Just basically across a bit of a channel of water. But yeah, this place is another wetland area, so it's an estuary. Got an estuary on both sides of me here, and I'm currently in a bit of a pine forest. But as you can see, there's loads of long grass, and you can say it's a wetland, so it's the perfect habitat for a lot of seabirds, especially during nesting season. Yeah, this would be a great place to come during that time of year. But there still should be quite a few birds around here throughout the year, so we'll see what we can find today. Also, that way, the estuary turns into a channel that goes out to the ocean. And yeah, apparently it's a great place to see quite a lot of different marine species. And even sharks, they've had great whites swim into the channel there, obviously looking for food, which is pretty cool. Don't think we'll get one of them on camera today, but never know. We'll have a walk and do a lap as usual, see what I can find. And yeah, I reckon we should spot some native wildlife today. So as I've been walking around the reserve, the tide's been going out. You can see the water's way back over there now. It almost looks as if you could walk pretty much straight across. I'm not going to try. But yeah, it's revealed all these little pools, and then they are like full to the brim with crabs and small fish, shrimp, and yeah, just other tidal creatures, which has made it pretty much an all-you-can-eat buffet for birds. I don't know if you can see, but kingfishers are like literally lining up through the trees. I hope I've got some good shots. I keep trying to get them feeding, but it's easier said than done. But yeah, I've never seen so many kingfishers. A couple of weeks ago when I was making the other video and I was like, oh, I hope to see one kingfisher. Every couple of minutes you'll see one swoop down. Most of them don't even stop, they just pick up a crab or whatever and fly into a tree. Hopefully I've got some good footage of that. And then, yeah, plenty of wading birds. You can see a white-faced heron out there at the minute. Some spoonbills. The royal spoonbill is not an endemic species. It's also found in Australia, Indonesia, and also on some of the Pacific Islands. However, it is a very iconic bird to New Zealand and can be seen in most estuaries and wetland areas on North and South Islands. Not easily missed, the spoonbill is so named because of that spoon-shaped beak, which it uses to catch its prey by placing it in the water and sweeping back and forth. And then because of very sensitive scent receptors, it can actually feel a vibration of any prey that might be moving around in the dark, murky waters. And when it feels like it's got something, it snaps and then pulls it up and swallows it whole. This group of spoonbills seem to have been muscled off this feeding area by this white-faced heron. The white-faced heron is one of a number of heron species in New Zealand, but this one is definitely the most common. They're not endemic, they actually come from Australia, but are now widespread here in New Zealand. As you can see, there's many different species in this one small area that I'm filming, and that's because wetland areas like this estuary are an important source of food for these birds, and because of that they will tolerate sharing their feeding ground with other bird species. This wading bird has one of the easier names to remember, because if you look at his legs, he looks like he's almost stood on stilts. He is in fact a species of stilt. He's a pied or black-winged stilt, as they're also known. They're not endemic, they're actually found in many countries around the world. So it's not just bird species that these estuaries are important to. It's also an important habitat for things like crabs, shrimp, small fish and sea anemones, to mention just a few. But for many of these small creatures, low tide can be a treacherous time, with only a few inches of water between them and predators that have special adaptations that allow them to catch their prey with speed and precision. But these creatures aren't completely helpless, many of them using their own adaptations in order to avoid being the next meal. For many, camouflage is their defence. Species of fish and shrimp that live in these pools are almost completely translucent, making them invisible even to the sharpest predator. Others, like mud crabs, choose to bury themselves in the ground, leaving only the tiniest hole. For many of these creatures, moving slowly or not at all seems to help evade detection, something this hermit crab is yet to learn. If it's not careful, this crab's movements are going to attract unwanted attention. And it's not just wading birds. High up in the treetops, rows of sacred kingfisher patiently wait for the perfect time to strike. Back down on the shoreline, and the hermit crab's movements have accidentally disturbed the hiding place of another crab. The crab knows that if it doesn't find another hiding place quickly, it runs the risk of being spotted by a predator. Fearing that it's still too close to the clumsy movements of the hermit, the crab makes a last-minute ditch and tries to dig itself back into the sand. The kingfisher swoops down, hovers for a second and then dips into the water with lightning-fast precision. The predator returns to the safety of a tree, prey in mouth. It bashes it against the branches to make sure it can't fight back before swallowing it whole. So areas like this one aren't just important to the plants and animal species that live here, they're also very important to people as well, because these areas work as filters. So all the sediment and the pollutants that make their way into the waterways end up in areas like this, and these areas then will filter that out before it goes out into the ocean. But unfortunately, because of the excessive amount and different amount of pollutants and sediment, these areas are now overstrained. And they're also threatened by something called eutrophication as well, which is where excessive amounts of nutrients make their way into the waterways and then they come to these areas. And in small amounts, these nutrients, things like phosphates and nitrates, are beneficial to the plants. But in large amounts, they cause algal blooms. So the algae grows too much and it depletes the water of oxygen. And then that has a knock-on effect on all the organisms in these areas. And unfortunately, it's not a good one. Areas like this are also threatened by development. Estuaries and other wetland areas are being drained and dammed up, and then they're being built on and used for things like grazing land for livestock. But luckily enough, people are now realising just how important these areas are, not just to the plants and animal species that live here, but to us as well. And areas like this one are now protected.